Hey guys, Pete here. We're here to discuss episode 6 of Severance's second season, Attila. I got my buddy Aaron from Bald Move here, and I'm gonna just ask you what's been up. I know I listened to your podcast and you were a little under the weather. How's that going right now?
I am a little under the weather. I'm a little under the weather the way Mr. Frolic is a little bit of a gentleman. I got last weekend. I just came down with the bug that I guess is going around. It was the flu. And it's the 102-degree fever, shaking, chills, cough, sore throat, upchuck, all that stuff, and that lasted for till about Tuesday night. And then me and Jim tried to scramble to get our whole week schedule done in like 2 days. But I'm feeling significantly better now. I'm a little, you can tell I'm still a little froggy, but I'm no longer, typhoid Gary, I guess.
That's good. Well, I appreciate you still showing up and being here. If if it gets to a point where you need to get out of here a little bit earlier, just let me know.
All right.
So luckily we have a really good episode to talk about here. I mean, this was one of my favorites. It felt a little bit like a part 2 of last week in a way, but the first part of that seemed more of like a resetting, getting things in place, and then this one felt like a lot of significant things happened, and really just the relationships are ridiculous once you add Severance into the mix, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I agree. I was a little surprised because we get to see these in advance, and then I just kind of like sit around on Thursday night like in my Discord waiting for people to roll into the episode thread and see what I saw. And the early results seemed like people thought this was like, not saying it's a bad episode, but like they thought it was the weakest episode of the season. But I'm like, man, I really have a hard time talking about this show in terms of weakest and strongest episodes. Like I can clearly say last year, like Defiant Jazz is an episode that stands out in my mind as being particularly like, wow, that's amazing. And then of course the final 2, but this year has just been all over the place and just uniformly excellent, I think. But
yeah, no, I that when as soon as I said that, I was like, yeah, but is that really true? Like they've kind of always and kind of whenever you're talking about TV specifically, week to week release TV, you know what I mean? Like one builds off the other usually when it's working really good. You know what I mean? So like it kind of should be the best one every week until it hits, a natural place where it has to reset or change direction or do something and then start that process over again. The Orpo felt a little bit like that. I guess that's why I thought that this was sort of like part 1 and part 2, you know what I mean? Because we started, that was we had that big like reintegration thing happen in episode 3. Then we had the Orpo, which was a lot of consequences came from that. So we sort of had to reset and get ready for the second half of the season. So yeah, there is a lot going on. I think one of the things that I was on a different stream a few days ago, and we talked about this a little bit last week, but one of the things that I'm liking right now is that a lot of that stuff that was sort of kind of taking all of the attention, like, is it Helena? Is it Helly? Was the Orpo real? Like, was that something that really happened? Like that people really sort of hit the ground running with simulation theory after that and everything, you know what I mean? So there was all this stuff that was sort of distracting from the main story as it was unfolding. And now it feels like, we're kind of in a spot where, we're all of that's in the rear view and we're going straight towards the end at this point.
Although I do wonder if they're not starting up another kind of like is it Helly or Helena distraction with some of these other, plots, which is I'm sure we'll get into as we discuss it, because I think that My theory is that the Erickson Stiller kind of brain trust has identified having a bunch of mini mysteries that are kind of obvious but don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Is like their kind of idea of cracking how you tell a mystery box in the post-internet age of television. So I do think that is still a few more camouflages and misdirections and dead ends that they're laying for us. But I could also be entirely wrong on that.
Yeah, I think that is the right way to do it now too, because you know that I mean, if people who were observing like the shift after Lost came in and was such a huge hit, one thing that you sort of have to do is you have to anticipate what's going to happen online on the discussion in
Yep.
between weeks. You know what I mean? So you gotta throw out something in between these big events, and to keep people engaged and feel like they're making some progress towards all this. Because I mean, people are spending like time every day in between, not everyone obviously, but like a lot of people are going and they're checking the Reddit, the subreddit,
Mm-hmm.
they're watching videos, they're doing something related, and so they have a lot of ideas kicking around. If you have that, if that is just like if there's no satisfaction to any of that, you know what I mean, it's sort of like people are going to lose interest, and they're going to, worse than that, they're going to turn on the show and start like spending that same amount of time like
Yeah.
trashing it in some way or another.
Right.
um
Right.
at least that's what it seems like it happens. Are there any of those, like, are there any threads that are kind of there that aren't the main focus that you're hoping to see them pull in this last run of episodes before the season ends?
Asking for predictions. Me and Jim talked about this in our kind of did like, we're just on the other side of the half of the season. What is the big picture here? Do we see both of us, I think, kind of see some form of Avengers slash Justice League forming around Mark integrated and Irv working for clandestine, like you said, Whole Mind Collective or something, and um Helly working on the inside, and Ragabi is their like Professor X kind of like leadership role. But it's really tough, especially when you picked up on this too, but there's been a lot of things that we've moved away from. Like we haven't seen the goat people for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen Koble for a long time. What is going on with there? And I think I also agree with you that there's a lot of kind of Miss Wong Koble style connections, and in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
maybe their background and where they came from. And yeah, I'm but yeah, as far as trying to figure out where this show is going, I got less answers than most, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think that's good. I think that's somewhat ideal too, right? Like where you feel like you trust the people that are making the story, writing the story, that putting it together, and you can just say, you know what, I'm gonna just be in the mystery. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna like enjoy the fact that I
Yeah.
don't know what's gonna happen, and then hopefully be like pleasantly surprised whenever it
Mhm.
materializes. Like that's
Yeah.
another thing that I think that showrunners should take into consideration if they're really going to lean into some of this like weird mystery stuff. So I put this picture of Salt's neck up there. What do you think? You think we're going to go there? Do you think that's where Cobell is at?
I guess it's really weird that she got almost there and then she turned around and went back and then she went back again. That's the only thing that makes me say, maybe not, is that that's the obvious answer. But on the other hand, I do kind of want to know what's going on in Salt Neck. So
Yeah. Well, you brought up Huang, and we're going to talk about them in just a minute, but like that is a way for them to, like, if they do have a shared history or some similar upbringing that got them to that, to be on the severed floor as unsevered employees, then if we can see something about what happened to Cobell, then that would also have the benefit of answering a lot of questions about like why this kid has been working in the office for the last 6 episodes or whatever. So yeah, I think that, that's probably something that's coming. I mean, they got to do something with Cobell, like that part. And this is the only real hint of anything, unless there's a lot of theories where like maybe she's the one that is talking to Irv on the phone, like he's calling, or like she's got some mystery role, like where like someone that we don't know who that is right now is actually Cobell, and we'll find out. But this is like the only real, they made a point to show that she was going somewhere before she turned around, and then she turned around, but then also got freaked out and left again. So it's really the only thing they gave us to go with,
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing, like you were saying about not knowing where it's going, and I think that like where I've gone in my head anyways is really kind of keeping things as simple as possible when I'm thinking about like what's actually going on, like for the big mysteries,
Right.
and keeping things in the filter of like, all right, so yeah, there's all these crazy details. There's goats, there's this, there's that, and all this other stuff. But like, what is Lumen? Lumen's a corporation, right? And so the corporation is going to do what corporations do. Like, I don't know if it's ever been like clearly stated that they are publicly traded. It just kind of seems like that's a regular assumption considering their size and their
Yeah.
reach.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time buying a privately held international
Yeah, I mean,
conglomerate.
yeah, it's different because this world is different. We don't know exactly how it's. We know that Kier is in a place called PE and not a
Right.
state or a thing
Right.
that exists in our world. So like, there could be some changes related to that. But yeah, I think I think it's a fair assumption to say that this is a publicly traded, like, there's an actual working corporation, like the ones that we know of, like Johnson and Johnson or something like that in our reality,
Mm-hmm.
that's there. And that, the goal of that is going to be to make profit, right? So it on some level, whatever they're doing on the severed floor should be related to that, right? From the
I
corporate side.
think, huh?
From the
From the corporate
corporate
side, yeah,
side.
yeah, I mean, so like, I guess there is like Lumen, the corporation. There is the Kier kind of like religion, right? The Egan Kier Egan religion, and then there's kind of like blends of two, and like obviously making money is an objective of the corporation, but we know like the current CEO also wants to put a chip in everyone's head. That's like one of the stated
Right.
objectives of the program. Is that for pure profit? Surely not. So
No.
they're trying. I think at some point the Lumen is going to be the Sabo that unfurls from the round, which is the Kier Egan that's trying to, I guess, put a bullet in all our heads, if I finished a metaphor.
Yeah, like I guess that's what I'm what I'm thinking is that like whatever they're doing, it has to originate from there. But then you have this weird family, like cult of personality, religion, whatever you want to call it, that is also like, what is their motivation? Like that's a different question, right? And these
Right.
two things are both essential in like trying to figure out what's happening. You know what I mean? Like they're not like there's like sometimes I wonder with the corporate side of things, like if it could end up being something really kind of stupid, you know what I mean? Like that would seem stupid to us because like corporations do things like that, right? Like they'll spend millions of dollars from an ad agency to change their logo, and you'll see like one next to the other, and you're gonna be like, for real? Like
Right.
yeah, that's what millions of dollars gets you, is like less of a drop shadow on it or like a slightly different color or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, you know what I mean? Like I think there, and obviously the show has leaned into satire in that space too. You know what I mean? So like we got a lot, I think there's a possibility for stuff like that, but then you have this other side, which is the cult, which, this episode, we actually got what I thought were some interesting, pieces of information. especially around Milchek and the things that he's doing after he has his performance review. So just looking through this thing for a second, but like, what is, I listened to your podcast and you guys were talking a little bit about how that it was kind of funny that he was only dealing with the two lesser issues, you know, the paper clips and the using too big words. Did you get the impression, all right, so that he has this performance review, it's a giant book, right? Like we see him look at it several times. There's a lot of pages in there. We've only seen a few of them, right?
Yeah, it looks like a Vogue magazine. You know, it's a tome.
And we saw them. This is all we only saw them address that as well, right? Like both times, like we saw whenever Drummond's talking about it in the conference room, he says you have three. He says at first he says you have three contentions. And then he goes through the first two, and then he says, but what we'll be spending most of our time on is all the other stuff, right? Which we see, like, you know, the Ortbo, the team that they made for Mark not coming together, you know, so on and so forth. So yeah, so there's a whole bunch of other stuff in that book that we haven't seen yet. But I thought what was interesting about this was that even the slight infractions are really important to him. You know what I mean? And not necessarily maybe because of who he is, but because of the way that he came up, right? You know what I mean? Like this idea of doing all the paper clips over and over again, that is not something that I feel like that's something that he's learned, right? Like not something that he just was like, oh, I got a good idea and just came up with himself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that this is like, I mean, I don't know, because we're talking on a podcast. It's so bizarre that like that's the type of feedback you get. It's like, oh, okay, I'll make sure that the paper clips are on forwards. It's not something that you would collate 5 reams of paper until your hands shake because you got to get them like muscle memory just right. This goes off to the bigger discussion I want to have about the one possible flaw of the show, which I wasn't even aware of until this episode, which is, if the Cold Harbor file is so goddamn important, why is there so little care to actually getting the people to work? Because like there's even this one shot in the middle of the episode that just showcases the MDR room completely empty.
Nobody working.
Dylan is smooching with his Audi wife, and Helly and Mark are getting it on, and Milchek is putting paper clips on paper. And Miss Huang is, I don't know, running the first aid station. But like last season, it made sense because Coble was obviously doing up to something, right? She was doing stuff that she didn't want the board to know. She's kind of running rogue. This episode where it seems like the board is like camped and just watching. What is the sense of having Milchek working on the two smallest of the infractions and letting the big stuff go and having an 11-year-old over the whole operation while the NEs are running amok, unless that is somehow part of what the project is? But it's
that's kind of the way that I took it, was that this is like, as you know, with the state, the thing that I went back to whenever he's doing this is that Drummond said that he thought that the acclaim and everything that's going to go along with Mark finishing this got to his head, so he needs to go back to basics, right? And so like this is what I thought of. This is the
basics.
This is him going back to basics, and like, of course, like with this in this image and this thing he's doing here, he's doing something very simple, like doing paper clips over and over again. But that's obviously related to something else, right? Like, you know, self-control, I don't know, whatever cure, like, you know, balancing his tempers, right? Something.
Is
some
this
kind of
like the equivalent of like an Opus Dei, like flagellating themselves with a whip? Like this is him
yeah,
torturing
that's what I
himself?
thought that's what I thought it kind of was. I thought it felt that way, like at least like some sort of abasement, if not like he's not hurting himself, you know what I mean? Like I guess his hand is shaking at the end or whatever, so there might be
Mhm.
some some health implications, but like more it's just sort of like, you're not worthy of care, so you have to do this thing and have complete control over yourself until you are, kind of thing.
Yeah. But what do you think again about the paradoxical importance of this project and the
Yeah,
minimal
that part I
staffing
think
that
they're playing a
they're
little fast and loose with. I'll give you that. They're
yeah.
trying to, like, like as far as the screen time that they have and whatever, they're trying to make this point a little bit more than they're trying to make that make sense, maybe.
Can I, because I haven't talked to you for a couple weeks. I was wanting to know what's your take on, there's a couple things I want to your take on, but from past episodes, I thought it was striking that Mr. Drummond, the frolic guy, I thought it was
Mhm.
striking that he told Helly about that he parroted that the work is mysterious and important. Do you think
Yeah.
Drummond knows what macro data refinement is? Do you think Helly knows? Like, why would you say that to someone like Helly?
I do believe that both of them know what's happening there. I think that was funny. Like, I thought that was that was I had a little bit of time. I had to think about that for a little while after I saw it too, because for one, it's funny on its face, you know what I mean? Just to hear him say the thing that
Right.
we heard other people
To
say. So
throw it
it's a
back into
good,
Helly's face. Yeah.
yeah, it's a good TV moment. But then, like, yeah, why would he say that? Like, why would he say that deadpan? Like, and I kind of landed on that he's reinforcing this thing that they tell them, like he's just saying, like, this is what we tell them, but you know what that means, you know what I
Mm.
mean? It- it's not
The other
perfect, but
the other thing I wanted to check you what you were thinking about is same guy, Mr. Drummond. When Helena asked, is father aware of this?" and he says, "Father encourages this." I've
yeah,
never heard anyone refer to James Egan as father other than Helly or Helena. Do you think that
yeah,
they are hinting that there is some sort of perhaps bastard familial relationship, adoptive familial relationship?
I think it's a possibility. I think there's two possibilities, I guess. One is that people who are really deep inside the cult, they do refer to the current leader as father. It doesn't really make sense, like, I don't think it's
Yeah, it's a very culty thing, sure. But I haven't
yeah,
even heard
but
like Coble hasn't ever
that's
even
what I'm
referred
saying. Like,
to,
it would be a little bit, they would need to do a little bit of work to fill in a blank or two there, but like
yeah.
the only other option is that, yeah, he also sees James Egan as his father, which if he does, it's either he adopted him or he's a biological father. And I don't, we never heard of anything about Helly's mother or anything about their about her childhood, or their family. Like,
Right.
something is not normal. It's not like a normal, like, there's something abnormal about their relationship. Like, she's going through, like, the people at the
Uh-huh.
office to see if, like, she can talk to her father, you know what I mean? Like, he's not,
Mhm.
it doesn't
Right.
sound like she can just call him on the phone if she wants to.
Or also,
And
I wonder is like, is this representative of their relationship or is this representative of the relationship after the feted Moppet, where she is met his disapproval and has been put at arm's length until she regains his favor, you
it
know?
could be. I think that there's just a lot of mystery around. I mean, he seems like, so, like, the actor that portrays him's older in the first place, but they go an extra step to make him look decrepit whenever they show him on screen too, you know what I mean? Like, to where he almost looks he doesn't look as human as everybody else does, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, no, he definitely is a little removed.
Yeah, so like there's a lot we don't know about Jay Megan. I think that's something we could definitely agree on.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I don't know. The father thing, I thought the same thing, you know, like maybe that's the implication. But it's not there's not strong evidence either way. I don't think. Nothing that makes me feel like I know for sure. Yeah, so I don't know, like with the paper clips and this thing, I think you picked up on the same thing that I thought was he, you know, he starts out and they have this really great camera shot, you know, that pushes in where you see both him and his reflection and then just only his reflection. And you know, he starts off with what he was saying to Miss Huang, and then it's pretty clear, I think, that he's talking to himself by the time he gets to the end, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I started thinking about this, and then I was talking to someone, a friend, and they were saying they brought up the idea about Cobell's basement and how she has that whole reversion thing going on, you know, like where she has it decorated like when she was a child at the Myrtle League School for Girls. And you know, it's kind of like there's a cycle in play here, right? Because he's thinking about, you know, if he's saying grow, if he's talking to himself in that way, then he's talking to a younger version of himself, right? That would be like in the exact same situation that Wong is in right now. You know, she's young, she's doing her thing, she's making her way up the ladder or whatever that is in their cult. So that connection to Harmony is interesting too, you know, like that this is something, because you know she treated him like shit at times, but was and then you know he's doing the same thing, like, you know, to Huang. She has that moment where she's all excited because she thinks she's going to get to sit at the big desk and
get shut smack down.
And he just waits long enough for her to like enjoy that and believe it's something that's going to happen, and then dashes it away from her.
Are you going down the route of everyone that works in like the Severance program and upper management is from some kind of Egan pipeline? Like is Milchek out of the Dieter Egan School for Wayward Boys, or you know, or are they all from? Because they're all deeply committed. You know, more than like someone that would just be like you hired off the street.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as far as like this particular severed floor and this particular part of Lumen. At least I feel like this is something that you have to be like you have to have made your bones in some way through the religious part of it before they're gonna put you in this position. I mean, think about how much stuff that Milchek has messed up since he's been there, and there's really never been much talk of like replacing him. It's really just about having him go sit in a room and fix his paperclip problem. You know what I mean? So like I feel like they don't have like a lot of people that they trust enough to put in this position.
Right. Well, and they still haven't backfilled crucial things like
there's no Grainer replacement.
Yeah, there's no Mr. Grainer. They've gotten less and less staff as the stuff has gotten more and more important. But they also, you know, there's also the wreck of the Edmonds Fitzgerald guy. So there's probably more staff than we're aware of. But then why are they letting all the frolicking happening in the MDR department? It's all mysterious and important, I'm sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, like that's what I've been liking the most about the middle of this season, is that they're really starting to crank that up a little bit, because I find that fascinating. And because it's about what we were saying in the beginning, you know, like we know what the corporation's goals are, but the the real interesting stuff could come from the Egan family, I think, and their adherents that they're pumping out eventually, somewhere. And this with Miss Wong, we heard a few things here about, like, he says she can't finish her fellowship, which I initially, just because she was in the office, you just kind of assumed that she was a paid employee, but I guess this makes a little more sense that she's like a internship sort of thing.
But that's even more hilarious that the staff is one full-time person and an intern.
Yeah.
With something that is the most important thing perhaps to happen on planet Earth.
That's I mean, is that a commentary on this kind of organization, like the way that cults are? Because I think last week we were talking a little bit, and me and Jim were talking about, like, loyalty. They kind of have to prize loyalty over competence. They would like to have both, but if you can only have one, loyalty is the thing that's going to get you. This is going to secure your position in something like this, right?
Yeah. That's something I was exploring on our podcast, that like it's a cult or any kind of dysfunctional organization. Like this Milchek sweating the paper clips and the big words over the Cold Harbor reminds me of a lot of places I've been where they've had ineffective middle management. That there's key performance metrics that they pay attention to, like, how many times did you offer the credit card, or how many times did this happen or something? But the actual, what are we doing to make the customers happy? What are we doing to make money? What are we doing to reduce costs? That doesn't get paid as much. So you have this like weird obsession with the minutia and missing the actual important stuff. You'd rather you promote people to toe the line over people that have independent thought and direction and things like that. So it could be, since this is at least partially some kind of statement on what we've got going on in corporate America. There's probably a little bit of that there too. Yeah.
Yeah. Claude sent me in. Thank you for the $5. They say that the breakdown with him saying grow up and grow to himself was heartbreaking. He's too dedicated for his own good. And that's that's sort of what's really working for me, is that, like, you say he's too dedicated, but to what? Is he too dedicated to Kier? Is he too dedicated to Lumen? You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much. It's just hard to say. Like, I think Kier is the correct answer, but we don't really know that for sure. We're always sort of guessing around about that.
Yeah.
This one is another one. Thank you, Natasha, for the $4.99. She just says that she's enjoying the nerding out and keep up the good work. Long live Kier. Yeah, Kier. I guess earlier in the when the show first started introducing some of its mysteries, that's sort of like an obvious choice, is that Kier would some kind of eternal situation with Kier. Now that we're halfway through this season, does that seem less likely or more likely in your mind?
Would you say that? What was the question?
Just some sort of like eternal Kier project, like bring Kier back, or the Kier consciousness will somehow live on.
Theory is that the reason that Mark and Jim are so important is they're the chosen vessel of the essence of Kier and the essence of Kier's wife, the swab girl.
Yeah.
Because
this season
aging out. She might be the current vessel. I don't know. I got a lot of weird theories. I can't substantiate any of them, but that's what I think.
So this season so far hasn't diminished your enthusiasm for that. You're still feeling pretty good about that.
I haven't seen anything. The only question I have is when like when they said that like Jim is their like a primary importance to them. Is she important to them because of her connection to Mark, or is Mark important to them because of his connection to Gemma, or are they both equally important? And until I get like, if they were to show that like one was more important than the other, then I would kind of like put the kibosh on my theory. But otherwise, yeah.
Right.
And there's also there's some reason this family, I keep coming back to the fact that like Mark and his sister chose of their own free will to live in Kier, PE, despite not having any connections to Lumen.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, they worked at, obviously, Mark worked at a university that was there. I feel like people move around for that. Do we know that they didn't grow up there?
No, we don't. But like again, it's just weird that you would like if you had an independent state or a commonwealth that was connected to like a corporation or a religious group, why would you move there if you weren't like if it wasn't for a job, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah,
is there some kind of long game of manipulation to get to, like I said, I don't know. I got that's another one of them crazy goat holes I like to go down.
Goat hole. Do you think the goats are coming back? They almost have to, right? I mean, they got numbers in that department that could come in handy, right?
They do have a lot of bodies down there. And they've already got O&D on their on their team. Yeah, I don't think you hire Gwendolyn Christie for a 5-minute cameo. I think that's coming back before next season for sure.
Yeah, because otherwise you're saying like, yeah, can you come in for an episode now and then maybe 3 years or so down the road, can you do it again? You know, like for the way that the productions cycles go nowadays, like
right. I hope we're over that now that COVID and the strike, like it might be an 18-month but like these 3.5-year cycles are brutal. Like what they're doing with Stranger Things, what they did with Severance, what they're doing with it's absolutely brutal for the momentum of these shows.
I saw something that said that we might get the next season of Silo this year. I don't know how
No shit. Wow.
That's what I saw. I definitely saw someone saying that. I don't know if that, I don't want to say that that's anything official behind that, but it's a possibility. It would be nice, you know what I mean? Like you think about Game of Thrones, you know, think about how crazy those first seasons were production wise and cast and everything else. Those used to come out every year.
Yeah, like there was I forget, I just saw it in Wirral Pass on chat, but it says it takes 3 years to make great TV. That's just patently untrue. Like, yeah, that's 10 years ago, we were churning out shows that would cost $20-30 million an episode every year. Shows with amazing writing and really complicated cinematography, and it's just this is just I think a result of I think what am I trying to say? Like the bloat of they're giving projects to people that maybe don't have the experience to handle it, and they're also we just had the unprecedented worldwide pandemic / labor shortage that just completely threw a giant monkey wrench into Hollywood. I think that they'll get back to it because they do like to make money. And I think them taking so long between releases is something that's keeping them from making as much money as they want. So
yeah, I think a lot of it does come down to the financialization and like all these mergers and different things that have happened.
Yeah.
That's like something that we could definitely, you and I think could probably talk for hours about, that maybe the people watching wouldn't be quite as interested in this Severance, Severance stream. So probably best not to dip our toes in that water. But as far as the cult, all right, before we move on, 2 more things. One, did you pick up on the similarities between someone like Milchek, who is not severed, but who is beholden to this way of life or this way of thinking, to the actual severed employees, like the innies? Do you think they're trying to make like a parallel there?
In what way? I guess in like what way?
Well, I mean, he's not severed. You know, that was a big thing, right? You know, he called Irv called him a smug motherfucker in the first season and pointed that out. But he's still kind of restricted in similar ways. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's before we talk about his complicated feelings about being a black man.
Yeah, that's not even taking any of that stuff.
Too. Yeah,
because
that's it's the Irv doesn't have the perspective to see the limitations that Milchek's got.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that might, because you're right. Like the first season, it's all about, look at how these adults are being treated by these other adults and these crazy, like the contrition things. It's like, that is insane
Mm-hmm.
shit. But it seems like stuff that they actually put themselves through,
Yeah.
like that performance review felt like it was a little, just a little bit we saw of. And the fact it came out with like a, this giant 100-page report indicates
Mm-hmm.
that there's a lot of contrition going on there. But they did get a nice lunch. I guess that's, you don't get that in the
Yeah, that's
in the
what was
break
striking
room.
to me about the first time. Whenever in the episode, the previous episode was whenever they were like, when he was like, "Oh, your tempers are gonna rebalance. We could maybe set you up with an obligement set." Talking to the future CEO, like I just didn't think that would
Right.
apply to her on that level, but it appears that it does. So
Yeah.
like what
They take this
Milchek's
shit
doing there,
seriously all the way to the top. Yeah.
that's what it seems like, right? And yeah, so I feel like there is. I don't think it's pretty hard to have any sympathy for anyone involved on that side of the story, based on what they're doing. But it's not like there's stuff going on with them too, I guess is what I'm saying. It's a little more complicated than it's easier to see it with Milchek maybe than like Helena, but
Mhm.
it is actually happening for her too. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's something that could definitely come back up. So we had just talked about Mr. Drummond, and that was the other thing I want to talk about. Yeah, I mean, Irv still lives in the his Lumen. I guess he has he lives in an apartment complex, right? It's called
Mhm.
Baird's Creek or something like that. For I think, or maybe I'm getting them mixed up. So maybe I'll just, without looking
So
it up,
Baird
I'll just.
Egan, he's one of the former CEOs. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember which
Brandon
one's
Baird
hit.
it.
Yeah, I can't remember which the name of his compared to the name of the one Mark lives in. That's what I was
Oh,
thinking
right,
of.
right, right.
But yeah, they both have. One of them is about Lenore, I think, and one's about Baird. Their
Mhm.
names.
Yeah.
So yeah, Drummond just walks in, right? And I got hung up on the same thing I heard you say you got hung up on, was that I'm thinking the whole time, okay, so if Bert works at Lumen, then, or if he has a history with Lumen in some capacity, he talked to them and he said, "Hey, I got this thing set up. You can go in and you can search his house." Or they came to him and they said, "Why don't you get together with Irv and let us know when he's going to be there, and then we're going to go in and search his place and see what he's up to." Right.
Mhm.
Um, so then, yeah, then it sort of, you see him going through the stuff, and then he seems to really key in on on Bert's name being on the paper,
Yeah,
like
they
it was a
draw it
surprise.
attention like
Yeah,
this was in the language of cinematography, that's his POV, and he's like, "Oh, this is a revelation. This is new information." I almost feel like it'd be dishonest if that is not the way that ends up being framed.
yeah. But when I was listening to your podcast, and maybe you guys even, I can't remember exactly, maybe Jim said something about this, but that could be him. That could be him discovering that Irv was also on to what Bert's up to, right?
This is true that
Like that was
Bert,
something that
like,
I
it's
didn't,
yeah.
I was a little confused. I just thought like, well, he should know about that. So why is this a surprise? The surprise, I think, might be that because I think we'll get to it when we talk to them, but I think I think there's a lot more going on with Irv than what he's presenting in that dinner, right? Like he's going there acting like he doesn't know anything about anything, and he's just like, just a regular dinner guest or whatever, but he's been investigating all this stuff for quite some time, right?
Well, and we
So
also know from last season that he had Bert's address circled, and then on the map it was actually checked off as a
right,
location. So yeah, he
right. So when
definitely, it's not the first time I think he's driven by that house at the very least.
right, and
Well,
so
I guess
whenever he
third
goes in
second
there,
time.
when he goes in there, and if he, he might have already known that Bert was, you know what I mean, at least his out. He obviously is any then. His any was like wildly in love with him and was, in a totally different situation, but like,
Right.
yeah, I thought that was something because I was like, the Drummond thing. I guess, yeah, let's just come back to that when we get to Bert, because there's so many other things that branch off for that. And before we get into like the relationships and all the crazy stuff, I did want to talk a little bit about reintegration and what's happening with that, because that's the part, like, as we get into these relationships, like, that's the thing that, because we agreed early on in the season that, reintegration is the end game for all of these people, right? The ones,
Seems
as
like it.
far as if the any is going to persist, if they're not going to just all get blinked out of existence before the series ends,
Yeah.
they're going to have to reintegrate, right? So
Hmm.
when you start getting these relationships where they like, how is that going to work? You know what I mean? Like, whenever you bring, like, there's a paradox, right? Like with Mark, if you bring Mark's, like, in the process of becoming a fully integrated person, does he love Helly or does he love Gemma, or how does it, does he split time?
Yeah, that's something we kind of discussed in the lead up to the season, is like, what if you were to, like, as the Supreme Court, try to decide like how you're going to unroll the severance program. You've decided that these people are being kept in slaves. Well, if you just discontinue it, you kill them all.
Yeah.
Do you like sentence to people who were severed who might not have known what they were doing? It's like, well, you're going to go to sleep, and then we're going to give the any however many years, and the free reign on the outside, and then you guys can share time. Seems like integration's the only way forward, but like, and
What does that
Mark,
actually mean?
and Mark is, I think, an easy, because, like, a person can love more than one person. Like,
Yeah.
that's a fact. But how would you integrate someone like Helly and Helena? They are literally oil and water. They are,
Mhm.
mortal enemies. They've tried to they've tried to kill each other. They've stole each
Yeah.
other's boyfriend. Like, that's where it's like a house divided against itself. Mark, I could kind of see. I don't know how you do it, and there's a lot of I wonder if they were hinting towards that. I almost got into it, but I feel like I get sick of being the guy that always wants to drag it back to the Bible. But there's a lot of biblical debate about this in terms of like going to heaven.
Yeah.
But in fact, the Pharisees tried to get Jesus trapped up with one of these things. It's like, I got this guy, Rabbi, and he I can't remember if it's a man or a woman, but like, he lived, he married somebody, that person died, he remarried somebody, that person died, he remarried somebody, that person died, and then the other person themselves died. In the
Huh.
resurrection, who are they married to? And Jesus is like,
Yeah.
that the resurrection is just like, that's all, it's everyone's like the angels. You're not married or given in marriage. Like, once you cross the threshold of death, that part of your existence is over forever.
Huh.
So that implies that, I don't know how to directly translate that, but it popped up in my mind when they were having a conversation with Bert and Fields, because from my
Mhm.
understanding, that's all folly anyway. Like, your pastor should be
Yeah.
like, well, you guys, you'll be plugged into the main line of God, and you'll be vibing all the time, and you won't even be thinking about missing your husband or whatever and all that. But so I'm like, I don't know. There's no way, unless they're going to be into into a erotic fixated thruple, that there's a way
Mhm.
that you can give everybody what they want in that situation.
Yeah, that's another thing that we have to come back to too, because I was sort of thinking, I mean, I've never been religious necessarily. I had a couple of years of Catholic school though when I was young, and my impression from that was that you can always sort of go to heaven if you're,
Yeah,
if you
I
repent for your sins, like, we're all sinners, right? So, like, the idea that Bert is not going to heaven seemed kind of rigid, but
Well, as I joked about in the podcast, like, what did you do? Sin against the Holy Ghost? Because that's like the only thing you can do, whatever that means. Like a direct sin
huh,
against God's spirit is the only thing you can do. That's like the so-called unforgivable sin. But like, yeah, do
right.
Lutherans not believe in the redeeming power of Christ's blood? Because I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure no matter how many times you stepped out on fields, and no matter how many times you had unprotected sex with people and did all that you can still say a sincere confession and do acts of contrition and get yourself back.
yeah. So I'm going to acknowledge this here. Rent Rentaler 111 says, I like to call him level 2 severed. I feel like he is somewhat severed with less restrictions. Like he doesn't know he is. And I think this is about Milchek, right? And that's what
Yeah.
that's the point I was going towards, was that he's not physically severed, but this dedication to the cult. And in those situations, like with Wong and him and Cobell, at least as for what I guess, is that they are completely indoctrinated into it at an early age without any choice. You know what I mean? Like this isn't something that they woke up one morning and said, you know what, I'm going to find Kier. This is something that's been imposed on them, from childhood.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So reintegration, I guess the main thing is we don't know what's going to happen whenever these two bodies, two consciousnesses are synced. All we've seen so far is that go horribly wrong in Petey, who I thought it was interesting that Mark had a few Petey moments in this episode, right? Like where he was just like, what, fuck you, I'm out. And you could totally understand how Petey ended up in that place where he was in season 1. It's not an easy thing to go through. Then the other thing, I mean, so yeah, we just don't know. Like there's going to be 2 things inside there. That's a bridge that we'll cross as we get there, I guess. The other thing about this episode was Regabi and her motivations really started to, I don't know, like there were just a few scenes where it seemed like we were supposed, like, not just that it was suspicious, but that we were supposed to be suspicious of her. Like they were trying to say, hey, look at this. Do we really know who she is and what she's, up to?
Yeah, I noticed you're a little bit more suspicious of her and your coverage than me and Jim were. Because I get more of that she's interested in Mark as almost like a science experiment more than she doesn't give a shit about Gemma and him getting together. But you're right, that's also not caring about your subjects. Also, she could be, more interested in getting back at Lumen than she is at Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the stated reason that she's doing this is because she feels bad because she propped them up and she did, she did their dirty work and she thinks it's ethically, morally, whatever, all those things that Rickon says about Severance in the first season. She regrets things and she's trying to make up for it. But then you like start to put it all together and like she murdered Grainer on sight. Murdered him. She could have ran away. You know what I mean? Like there's other options. Like she just, I don't know, like the way that she's presented is that she, like, would she do that if she was just trying to make up for the time that, like, does that,
what did she think Grainer was there to do to her, though? Like, what? Because he
saying,
was supposed to bring her back,
But she clearly had the jump on him. You know what I mean? It's like he didn't know where she was. Obviously, is how she was able to like hit him over the head with the baseball bat. So like she could have just dipped out. She really wanted to reintegrate Mark,
right,
and was willing to do that in that situation to make sure that.
I mean, the fact that he was also she was squatting in that university kind of like on the sly. So like the fact that he's blown up her spot, like now where's she going to go? But if she kills him and then reintegrates Mark, then she's got a basement. I don't know.
Yeah. So
She's just really looking for a place to live. Have you seen the rents out there lately here in America, Pete? I mean,
yeah. So I mean,
crazy.
so if the answer turned out to be that she was just someone who felt bad about doing this process on so many people, and that because like the thing about reintegration is, right, the way she describes it, it's the only way to get a message in. It's the only way to get a person in to get past the security to be able to, you know what I mean? Because you could have someone who was sympathetic to whatever cause you had, as soon as the severance chip is flipped, they're not on your team anymore. They're an innie that can be molded into lumens.
True.
You know what I'm saying? So like she says that directly. She says the only way to get something in there is reintegration. And that really that opens the door for a lot of different motivations whenever you think about it like that, you know?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it didn't seem like she 100% knew what they were doing, or at least she wouldn't say exactly what they're doing with Gemma. And then the other thing that really caught me
So
on the second one,
and that's the thing is like, do we not know, or does she just playing things close to the vest? Because Mark would have no way of knowing what she knows.
that's what I'm saying. Like, why lie about
Yeah.
it if it's, you know, I don't know. So I guess if nothing else, like, you know, keeping an eye on her is where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like, what is she trying to accomplish? Because a lot of the things, whenever I think it through, aren't very satisfying either. Like, she could be the person that's working with the group that's working with Irv or something, you know, and they could have like bigger things. There's just like there's a possibility of like corporate espionage, but I definitely don't like that as much.
Yeah.
Because because that was sort of hinted at in the Lexington letter, you know what I mean? And like that to
They
introduce
blew up
another
that other
company.
prototype. Yeah.
Yeah, like if the next step was to introduce another company that might even be more shady than Lumen, like that just doesn't sound like the interesting direction for the
No.
story that I want to see it go in.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see, you know. I guess the last thing, I mean, this is, you know, Mark takes a lot of risks here. He's paying a little bit of a price at the end of the episode. Like, do you think what do you think that the actual seizure, because like as far as cliffhangers go, this one was sort of like the most the sort of like mild, I think, you know what I mean? Like
Mark's not gonna die.
Right. So like what does the seizure actually mean, you know, for like when
I just kept thinking that like the reason Ragabi said Pete ended up the way he did is that he didn't follow the aftercare instructions. And as soon as she says, you really can't move your head like this, he gets up, goes upstairs, rages around the kitchen, and then collapses and bangs his head against the ground. Like, and what do you think of our podcast speculation about is it going to be significant that Mark's showing these many signs of reintegration and showed up and reported to the first aid station? And, you know, there's a potential that, you know, that Miss Wong might not clock anything, but we know that from the Richmond file that Lumen is very preoccupied with their employees' health and do health checks and all these other stuff. And it's how much of that is like, is cover for them just trying to, because how much of that is cover them trying to figure out what employees are reintegrating or trying to ward against that possibility that it's like in the management handbook, hey, if you see employees that have bleeding nose, disorientation, dizziness, call this number so we can get them help.
Yeah, I didn't think that the actor gave anything away. She seemed to be just like,
I wouldn't think she'd be in on it. It'd be more of like there's a thing that she would have to do when, you know, like some kind of paperwork or.
Well, I thought it was interesting because she brought up the idea of auras or hallucinations, you know what I mean? And that's what he does experience later is the aura where he smells a funny smell, right? But he lies. So I don't know if she picked up on that. I mean, like I said, the actor I don't think gave anything away about like being suspicious even, you know. She was just sort of like, did Helly hit her? And you know, Helly has there with her hair all messed up and that kind of takes
The sectaire.
like, yeah, that kind of takes like the attention away from everything else, at least
Yeah.
like from our perspective.
I saw in chat that Gary said there's a non-zero chance that Mark dies and then a new Mark S gets rolled out from the testing floor. And that's true, but I think that's something that you and I are kind of secretly dreading if they start like just going whole hog into cloning, you know.
You have to have a good reason, and I don't know.
And you got to put limitations on it, and there's got to be
You really
clear-cut
do.
rules.
There needs to be rules.
Or else it gets a little Harry Potter.
That's where the mistakes always seem to happen, is that, I don't know, like, I mean, I'm all for not knowing and just writing and seeing what comes up, but like, that's where those kinds of things come into play, you know, like having some rules and having some things that you won't do, like kind of keeps you from having it get too crazy, you know, and just not satisfying, you know what I mean? Because if like anything can happen,
yeah,
how exciting is it whenever something crazy like, if just like,
it's like
oh,
playing, it's like
everyone's
like
got
playing. Yeah, like playing
ahead.
a game of tag as a kid, and it's like, oh, I got force fields now. Oh, I got anti-force fields. It's like, what? When did force fields become a thing?
It's sort of, you're sort of ruining the game there.
Exactly.
All right, so now I think we can. Is there anything as far as what we've touched on so far? Is there anything that you wanted to explore a little further?
No, not if things have been brought up yet.
All right, yeah, because now I think we're going to get into what is the meat and potatoes of this episode.
The human glazed ham of the episode, did you say?
Oh yes, we can give him a plate of loose corn.
Fields and Bert are pretty entertaining as a couple, you know.
Yeah, did you happen to listen to the official podcast this week that Christopher Walken's on there?
Oh shit, no, I didn't, because I've been so sick, and we I was going to listen to it before we do our feedback episode Tuesday, but no, I hadn't. That's really exciting though.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to hear. See, like, I mean, it's not like he's a podcast guest. It's like, Ben Stiller went to his house or his apartment or whatever and sat down for a conversation. And yeah, he just talks about what he was thinking about with Bert and things like that.
Yeah.
I won't spoil it for you if you haven't heard it yet, because there's nothing that's really, there might be a few things.
I was gonna say, you can probably, I don't think they spoil things on the official podcast. That's kind of their thing. They can't really even accidentally get too far ahead of themselves.
No, they seem to be a little bit.
That one commercial in the first episode. That's the only spoiler you're going to get all year.
They seem to be a little bit smarter with the way that they do their inside the episodes too, because it seemed like HBO did that. They really started to make that a thing and kind of ended up putting their showrunners on blast quite a bit just by the way that they presented those things, you know. They keep, I don't think they did that, but I don't think I've seen another Apple show where they've done that. And it seems like this one, they're doing it right after, like when the episode comes out, and they keep it, they do them pretty smart, like to where they don't let things get out of hand. All right, so we got love triangles, we got thruples, we've got, I mean, I don't even know what
triple thruple is what this episode was.
Yeah, but if you look at what's going on with Mark and Helena and Gemma, I mean, there is a shape there, but it's pretty complicated.
Yeah. I thought you it was smart that you pointed out that like Mark in the Chinese place is a man who slept with both halves of these women and has no idea.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And she doesn't know. She doesn't know that he's consummated the other half of her. There's like, yeah. And I think we talked about this in the intro to our podcast. Like, this does give you this chance to do really unique things with the relationship dynamics that you couldn't do in almost any other show. You know, you can do so many soap opera cloak and dagger type relationship stuff, and I'm eating it up. I confess to being a bit of a inveterate shipper. I love seeing people
Yeah.
fall in love, and this is like I can see multiple versions of the same person fall in love. I'm a pig in slop, man.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And then we did talk about this a little bit last week about the sci-fi, the sci-fi angle on this, and like how, that you can, if you have a good premise there, and you really kind of think things out, you can hit like dramatic moments in a way that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, of course, the technology or the time period and whatever is what sets things in motion. But like whenever sci-fi is really good, it's whenever you think about, well, how could I do something with this concept and that just wouldn't be possible in another, if this thing didn't exist. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Because I mean, you could give this you could look at this and say, well, okay, so yeah, this show is just a show about people falling in love and blah blah blah, and it's pretty straightforward, relationship stuff. But whenever you throw this little twist into the into the equation, it does make it a lot more exciting and a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of talked about the core issues, the paradox of like, who is Mark in love with? I mean, like, because I mean, and I mean, like you said, people can love two people and all that other stuff. But I guess I'm thinking story wise, you know what I mean? Like, who do we want to see him end up with in the end? Because like right now, Gemma she's been presented as this ideal, like everybody has nothing but good things to say about her or whatever, but we don't know her. The only thing that we've seen of her is this other version that's not her, that is Miss Casey. And we feel sympathetic towards her because she's a prisoner inside of this situation, right? But like Heliar, like I really like this character that I've gotten to know over the last season and a half, right? And so like, do I want to see her blinked out of existence so that Mark can go back with his wife? Like, not really. You know what I mean?
And the other thing you mentioned that like we've only heard good things about Gemma, and it makes me think of like, you don't speak ill of the dead, and Mark's in the bargaining mode. And I was kind of shocked to hear Mark, because I thought this drinking was like a post-death kind of thing. But if anything, it implies it's gotten worse. But there was too much drinking before, and he wasn't listening. So there might have been problems in their relationship that like Devin and Rickon didn't see, because they thought that they had the ideal relationship. But also could just be Mark, like you said, bargaining. Like, oh, maybe if I didn't drink as much, because maybe I did. But like, why? If my wife died today, I might think of a lot of different things that I wish I could do differently, but like, I don't drink at all. I don't drink much at all anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, that wouldn't be one of the things I would say. So I was just like, are we going to learn some more darker sides or some more complicated sides? Because as turns as like, who does Mark choose, Helly or Gemma? Like, which Mark are we talking about?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I sort of took that as like what he feels bad about with himself right now. But then when you just said that out loud, that was what my take when I watched it in the episode. But when you just said that out loud, I picked up on the fact that he said he would listen more. And that's not obviously he's not listening to her right now because she's dead. You know what I mean? So like, you could be onto something there. That might be a hint to like, I mean, I figured they were his shortcomings, and I figure, like if he's experiencing grief, that's going to be amplifying things about him, not like inventing brand new things. Like he wasn't like, he didn't discover alcohol the day that she died or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that just wouldn't really, that doesn't really make too much sense when you're telling a story about a person. You know what I mean? To just give him this overnight, he just turned into a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like he had potential at least to be this kind of a loser before, but for whatever reason, he kept himself together a little bit better, I guess.
And there was
is the way that,
disappointments in their relationship too. They wanted to have children, they couldn't have
yeah.
children. They felt differently about that. Like I said, we don't know what stress lines and fractures and fault lines. Like, what if Gemma was actively trying to leave him when this all went down? Like, there's a lot of things they could do, but like, again, I don't. There's no evidence for any of this stuff, so it's just I'm just pointing out the tracks they could lay stories on, and this is the first time we've ever heard anything about them having anything other than the perfect marriage.
Mm-hmm. All right, so okay, so what's your relationship with Greek mythology?
I'm a enthusiast, but not an expert.
Right. So I think I mean, I know I've seen this circulated around. You might have actually talked about this too, because remember Mark, whenever he came back, he called his sister Persephone, right?
Yeah, the one gets stolen by Hades. Right.
And then I know it's been a theory about Orpheus, right?
Uh-huh.
Are you familiar with Eurydice?
Isn't it the guy that tried to swim across the river Lethe?
No, this is the story of it's an underworld story too, right? So I'm going to paraphrase this really simply, and because the important part is the important part, I'm not a big I'm someone who comes across comes across Greek mythology and always think it's interesting, but also kind of have like a thing, because all these stories are stories, you know what I mean? And they're stories that evolved and were passed down and came from other places. This isn't something that, this isn't the original version of this story kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So what the deal here is that Orpheus, he's got some important parents, and just like they all do, right? And he's very good at playing his lyre, and he has a beautiful voice and is a great singer and all this kind of stuff, right? And he meets Eurydice, and they're completely in love, and they're going to get married, and there's different versions of it, I guess, you know what I mean? But she gets bit by a snake and dies, and she goes, and he's
look where they're hiking. My God, I mean, duh, I could have told them they're not even wearing boots. Jesus.
And so what he does, is he goes to the underworld to get her back. He can't live without her. All right. So you can make the parallel here, the underworld, the severed floor.
Sure.
Right now, if Miss Casey / Gemma is Eurydice, then she's in Hades, right? And he's on his way down there to get her. So he goes down, and he basically makes his way through. Like he plays his lyre, and the dogs of Cerberus, the three-headed Cerberus, falls asleep. The fairy person likes the song so much, he takes him across the water for free, and he gets there and he talks to Persephone, and what's the god of the underworld's name? It's
Hades.
Oh yeah. So all right. So
it is Hades, right? That's the Greek.
So
one?
Hades is the god, but what's the underworld called?
Oh, I do believe it's also called Hades.
So now I'm confused. But anyways, the important part is that,
chat, are we crazy? There's got to be someone that, there you go. I think we're getting Hades also. Hades, he lives in Hades.
Okay, so
here,
yeah,
set up his company in Kier PE. What do you want?
Right. So he talks to them, and they're convinced. They say, okay, you can take her back. We don't usually do this, but we really like your song. We really like the way you play your instrument there. It's a very sad story. Take her back. Only one condition. You can walk all the way, you got to walk all the way out of here and not turn around and look at her. You can't look at her until you get outside, basically.
Okay.
That's the hook. And so he's fucking pumped, you know what I mean? It worked. And so he's on his way out, but he starts to question himself, and he starts to question if she's really there, of course. And he gets all the way to the threshold, to like where the light, he can see the light of the outside, and he breaks and he turns, and then he loses her forever.
Did the classic mistake. You didn't follow the aftercare instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And you lost it all.
Yeah, so you know what I mean? Like when you think about Gemma, she could be this thing that motivates him. That I'm like, I don't think this is going to turn out to be a 1-to-1, you know, but I mean, I think
there's also a lot of tracks. You're aware of the tracks that they're laying towards Gemma being Persephone too. That, you know, she's someone who was stolen by the underworld, and then she partook of things from the gods, and then she could never fully return to the land of the living. She was forever caught between the two, or she could only spend so much time.
She could only come out seasonally. Yeah, her deal was she's a fertility, or not a fertility, but a
the
like
daughter of a fertility goddess.
Yeah, but like she's like farmers, because like whenever she would go back to the underworld, right, that's like winter, and
that's
then
when
winter
she
comes back out, everything gets fertile again, right? Yes, vegetation. She's like for, you know, farmers and whatnot. Yeah, so there's a lot there, but I mean, the underworld parallel, you know, and then just the idea of like what, you know, him being driven to save her, which ends up not being possible. You know what I mean? Like, and then that starts to make sense of like, okay, well, at the same time, this other part of him discovered this other part of this other person, right?
Yeah, right.
So then you can see an end game in that direction too.
What do you think Mark's, I mean, I'm probably asking the question, it's impossible. What would you think the looking back would correspond to? Like, you know,
yeah,
like
I don't know. It could
is he gonna maybe be able to get Gemma free and clear, but any Mark is now concerned that would put an end to himself and Helly, and he wants Helly. So
yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. Like the thing that I think about is we don't know how she's there, right? Like it could be a thing, like, because the car accident could be completely real, and they could be going around taking people that are otherwise unresponsive, comatose, or whatever. And for some reason, when you sever these people, then all of a sudden you can create a new consciousness inside of them that you can work with.
So
if you take her outside, so if you take her outside, then she just isn't alive.
Is in a coma.
Sense, yeah, and not in the sense that you know, you would expect or be able to work with. I mean, of course, like, it's your wife, you're going to get her medical care and do the whole 9 yards, but you're not going to be together, which is another reason. And that the Ragabi stuff was suspicious to me, because she says it like matter of factly. The Gemma you love is still in there. Whenever she comes out, you'll be together. And that just didn't sound honest to me. That sounded like something that she's saying. It just seemed like she's saying whatever he needed to hear to keep going.
Yeah, it's possible.
Because how does she know that? If she doesn't know what they're doing to her, how does she know that she's still in there?
I mean, you could take it in generic form that, like, she just knows that she does the severing, and, you know, if that doesn't mean that person's gone, it just means they're severed. So if you bring her out, it stands to reason. But if you have the theory that she knows a lot more of what's going on down there than we think she does, then who knows?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Super interesting, though. Super interesting. I wanted to, let's see here. There's a question here about why did Recon, thank you for the $10. Why did Helena
This man
say the
has an
wrong?
amazing hair and beard. Good for you, buddy.
Why did Helena say the wrong name to Mark in the diner when talking about Gemma? Also, all the underlined letters in the papers Drummond was looking at in Irv's house has to be a code or message. I didn't pick up on that, the code or message underline stuff. I'll have to look at it. But this first part, what was your take on why she said the wrong name?
I thought that she was checking Mark for something. She got in that intense flirt because, like, you know, when they're doing the flirting thing, you're like, oh, interesting. She's wanting to go, and you know, she's got like because I do think it's brilliant that in the first episode they set this erotic fixation throuple as like this complete joke, and then as we get on this season, like Helena might be erotically fixated on Mark, and she's trying to like claim the outside the way she claimed the inside. But then when she hits him with the fake name, and she's like looking to see because you know he knows that, or at least would have to suspect that she would know the truth about Jim, and her bringing it up is like, the hell?
Yeah.
Well, I think
No,
she was
she did it
looking
on
to
purpose.
see if there's a flicker recognition or something there.
Yeah, we can agree that she did it on purpose, right? This was a calculated choice.
Yeah.
I like your idea about that. That's kind of where I was at. Like I was thinking that she definitely wanted to check him, you know, like that. You kind of see that like she's really paying attention to him after the fact. But yeah, I wasn't 100% sure. I was sure that she did it on purpose and that she had a reason, but I wasn't sure that they
Pretty sure.
established. Yeah, I wasn't sure that they established what that reason was. Because the other thing that I didn't know for sure, and I think you guys expressed the same thing on your podcast, is that, are we seeing Helena there as an agent of Lumen? Like she called up Drummond and said, "Hey, I'm going to go meet Mark Scout at the thing, you know, because we're following." Or did we see Helena there as someone who wanted to go see the guy that she just slept with, his innie?
That's what's so smart about this show is like every time they, you know, like I thought it was pretty obvious that Helly was Helena. And it turns out we debated that for 3 weeks. And there's some things that I think that the show does so good to, because it's impossible. You got the you know, we got the experience of Cobell fresh in mind that she was working for her own purposes and doing kind of her own thing, but also kind of working for Lumen. And you kind of want to go that down with Helena, but also Helena seems like she was really fixated on Mark and the relationship that Helly had. But then again, maybe she was just doing that for research because she knew she was going to have to pretend to be Helly. And there's just so many ways to look at it.
Yeah, we can agree that she was flirting with him, at least at the beginning, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that part I think is indisputable.
But was that because she's got the hots for Mark, or is that because she's setting him up for the 1-2 combo?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
you know, disarm him before she hits him with something devastating, and then just look and see what kind of reaction you get.
Yeah, I think that probably makes the most sense, that she was kind of checking his stability, like where was he at, like how would he react to something like that. But I really don't know, because I feel like she is a team player. I feel like she is there doing what she's doing because it helps, but I feel like she also there's another layer there of her own agenda. And I think, and I imagine that that's smarter. Now, since we're here, I guess we now have to bring up the idea of there being a pregnancy involved in all of this.
All right.
Like there's definitely, this is the kind of sex that can make children, right? Like this is unprotected sex.
I was skeptical of like
right?
when it was a potential one and done Ortbo type thing, but now we're making it a habit.
We're getting more chances for that to be a reality.
Yeah. By the way, if you ever see me switch to this screen, it's not because I've left. It's because I'm blowing my nose and I'm deathly afraid that there'll be like a curtain of snot in my mustache on camera. So you ever see Arnold, it's just because I'm blowing my nose, but I can hear
No
and respond. And
problem.
I'll be back as soon as I know I don't have snot sickles hanging out of here.
Yeah. So yeah, we're getting more opportunities for that to be true. And I was with you. I was like, okay, well, yeah, it's a possibility, but I'm not really in favor or hoping to see them go that direction necessarily. But then I saw them introduce this idea of not going to heaven and like the any going to heaven and like that being
Right.
another scenario, because I imagine that when you got a writer's room there and you have this concept and you sit around, you're going to pitch ideas of like, well, what could we do that would be specific to this framework that we have in place, right? Like, what are some other ways, because obviously like people are sad and depressed, so they go get severed. People need money, so they go get severed, like what are some of the other things, right? And then if you extrapolate on another step, it's like, well, what can happen, that would be made extra complicated. And because like if she is pregnant, then there's going to be a question of whether the any conceived or the Audi conceived, or if
Oh my
the
God.
father is any or Audi too, because at this point it could be any of the four people, right?
True.
Yeah. So I'm still not like in love with the idea necessarily,
But
they're
yeah, because it's like, I don't know how many because you're like, that's an interesting complication, but how many complications does the show need?
right. That's what I was just gonna say. Like you could really keep going if you wanted to, but like,
It sounds really
oh,
General Hospital-y though, too.
yeah, then
You've already got a wife in a coma who's got a secret identity. Like, we're
yeah,
really
yeah,
heading down the daytime soap if we go too much further.
yeah. You're talking soap opera for sure at that point, but like, yeah, I would say that's pretty much, yeah. Like if they do it, they do it, but like, I feel like if Helena did that, it would be, there would be some kind of a Kier related reason, Kier cult reason. Does that make sense?
If it what now?
If Helena went into that situation wanting to conceive a child,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Not like just something that happened accidentally. Because I
would it
see
be?
some people theorize that, like that, obviously she violated, that
Yeah.
was a violation. I've
Uh-huh.
seen people
Of
get
course.
pretty geared up about that, but then also that like, she went there and basically stole his seed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure. And that's, goes back to like, if they're looking for, the Immortality Project, the Perpetuity
Mhm.
Ring, if they're looking for some kind of vessel, if she's trying to bring that forth somehow, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. So like, I feel like that would be where that would work or not work, is like what her purpose was, because obviously like inside, Helly she's just, you know, she's just along for the ride. Like she's just a teenager experiencing this for the first time. Is that what do we believe? Like, obviously, like that's her first time. Do we actually think that is the implication that Helena, that's the first person she ever slept with as well? You're muted.
God dang. It's a process to blow my nose and come back, apparently.
Sorry.
What was because I was like all the way through a statement. Damn it. What was the question again?
Do you think the implication in the show is saying that this was Helena's first sexual encounter as well?
Oh, she did say that that Mark would be the first boy that she brings home to dad, so that leads a little bit of
And that seemed
credence.
pretty pointed.
Also, her kind of real fixation on the physical relationship of Helly and Mark is another, I think, indication of that. The fact that
Yeah.
she did seem kind of shy and, for lack of a better word, coquettish in the tint that, this is like something she was nervous about, that I guess she could be nervous about a lot of different reasons doing this undercover sex work. But yeah. But
I think it
on the
was
other
the
hand,
implication.
Yeah, okay. Because like the other thing is, I don't know how much to believe these Egans. Like she could just be saying that to play with Mark's head, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I'll agree with you on that one. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Like I was really surprised in the beginning whenever, because I mean, the way we meet Helena Egan is like she's in this dress at this place with all these important people. Like
Right.
you got the idea that this is, this is someone who's like cosmopolitan, like that's,
Worldly. Yeah.
yeah. And like, this is it's not really turning out to be the case exactly is what they're saying right now, as far as I can tell.
Right.
It's there's a lot of, like I said, that, like, if you think about that, the way that the shape of their relationship, and the way that Innie's outie is, everybody is connected in different ways. Like it'll be curious to see how that, because I mean, I want to see Helly win, I
Oh
want to see
yeah.
Helly win it, but like
Mhm.
that seems really difficult to have
Yeah, she's
happen.
the only character that I would like to see win at the expense of her outie. Like somehow I want both Marks to win. I want both Dylans to win. I want both, but like fuck Helena, yes Helly. Like just have Helly take over.
Yeah.
Just yank her body. Just commandeer her body. Fuck her, kill her.
Yeah.
Control up delete file on the Helena.
All right. Yeah, but you invoked Dylan, and I'm gonna just come out and say this here. Like I got a little defensive whenever I was listening to you guys.
Yeah, we went hard. I've already seen some feedback rolling in. We went a little hard on our man Dylan.
Yeah, like
Howdy,
I
Dylan.
think it's part of the story, because well, first of all, you compared Audi Dylan to the guy from the last season of Fargo. I don't remember his name, the golfing guy.
Yeah.
One
I
major
think that's a
difference.
fair comparison.
Well, but the one major difference is that guy stayed home and did no work ever while his wife paid the bills. You know what I mean?
So
Like
exactly
Dylan,
like Dylan until he got this job.
maybe, but like right now, for where they're at right now, I mean, like he is actually pulling a serious paycheck, as far as we know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, I mean, I think that with Gretchen, there's obviously she's got there's issues there, right? You know what I mean? Like there's things that she sees in there, in his Innie, that she wishes that she could see in the man that she's with on the outside. That's basically how it plays out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it exists there, then that means it must have existed, or it's possible. But like, I guess the thing is that this is so sweet. Like this whole situation, both actors completely nail it. They're like the perfect people to do this with, you know what I mean? Because it's just like, I don't know, they just look like they're just they like I think you said it was like she's an adult, but she gets to be a teenager again when she goes in there too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not just like, oh, I like this guy because he's
It's
like my,
taking a time machine back to the beginning of their
yeah,
relationship was all possibility, and Dylan's just like, I could just stare at your beautiful face and listen to you
yeah,
talk about the kids, and I never get bored, and I'll never mix up who's got what ear infection, and I'll obviously do the cookies right, and she misses that attentiveness. Look at Zach
yeah,
Cherry there. Look at this
yeah,
guy.
yeah. He's
How could you not?
awesome.
How could you not love that looking at you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but what I was thinking about this, and is that it's so freaking sad in a way, is it not? Like
Yeah.
the inside part is great, but it's also it only exists there. You know what I mean? Like this
Mhm.
is basically, like they talked about it on the official podcast, like a prison visit.
Yeah.
That's really kind of what it is, right? She's going to visit a prisoner
Mhm.
who, they got 18 minutes. Like the one session, the first one they had was like an 18-minute session. It was
Right.
timed. they were reminded that someone was watching them. Miss Wong she chimed in at a point, you know what I mean? So like, that's not ideal, but they're finding this thing, but it's this thing that only exists inside here. And that it can never go, she can never take that home. Not really. You know what I mean?
Unless we integrate the two Dylans. But I Jim floated that on the podcast. I'm like, I don't know the Audi Dylan would be into that. Like if they approached him and be like, hey, we're all in on this caper.
Yeah,
I don't know the Audi Dylan would be like, I don't want to like he's like Mark season 1. I don't want to fucking reintegrate.
Yeah, that's a consideration, but also like, for him, from his perspective, you know what I mean? Like they're raising children together. They're in a relationship. He has issues, obviously, you know what I mean? Like he's going around, he's doing things that aren't necessary, that are about him, not about the family first or whatever. Right. But like, you're saying like this other person's ideal because they don't have his experiences. But like for us as flawed human beings who exist in the world, like our experiences are what make us us. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you could say, oh, like, what would I be like if you took all my experiences away? But also like that wouldn't automatically be better.
Right.
You know what I mean? It might be more pure. It might be more of a return to like what I was like, but like I fucking paid my dues. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Like the hard lessons that I learned.
I've had, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to go back and make my life easier in any place because it would fundamentally change who I am. And I kind of like that.
So that's another question I thought, and just something that was just kind of sad whenever I thought about it, that this brought up in a way that the other stuff didn't. Like, I thought that was pretty specific to this,
Yeah.
Is like, yeah, of course, like if you got a chance to go in for 18 minutes a few times a week and have this person gush over you, like I can get that part, you know what I mean? And you might even be able, if you're in Audi Dylan's shoes, you might even be able to say, oh, that I'm okay with that. Like, it's not, I don't really see that as like a, as an affair or you stepping out.
Well,
like, emotionally or whatever.
My rule of thumb is if you're not willing to tell your partner something, then it's probably cheating. Whatever it is, if you are not willing to tell your partner you're doing it, you think it's cheating. Even if they don't. So she's worried about it. But also, didn't you have a take as like it might not be that she's cheating, it's more of like she's just protective of. But that's still, like I said, I keep going back to, if you're not going to tell your partner what you're up to, it's probably, it's shady.
Yeah. And Merritt Weaver does a great job of like showing her cycling through those different choices and what they might mean and landing on the idea of like, yeah, I'm just not going to tell this guy. I noticed someone had made I saw a comment where someone said that they focused in on their degrees, and I couldn't find it when I went back, but I did notice that this plaque in the background here is his refiner of the quarter plaque. Like they got that displayed.
Give it to an Audi. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And the other one I think is a picture of them, the one that they made all big whenever he first went inside together. I still often think of the picture of them at the dressed up like the old timey one. And
yeah, we live on a ranch.
We live on a cattle ranch. That's seriously like I'll just be sitting there doing something unrelated, and all of a sudden that image will come in mind, like because the smile that's on Zach Cherry's face in that photo as well. Like everyone else is kind of like because usually when you take those, you all don't smile, right?
Well, and also is that another hint
like outlaws or
he wanted to do? He wanted to go and spin pictures, making them all look like Wild West badasses, and everybody else is kind of like,
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. You're supposed to mean mug.
Yeah, I thought that was sort of built into that whole experience.
Supposed to pretend like you're in a Ken Burns Civil War documentary and just.
All right. Well, that'll get us to the finish line here. And
this is
Irving,
this is the cumin cured ham. I thought we were going to go right to that. You swerved on me. So all right, ready to go. This is another thing I gotta talk to you about.
Yeah. So what do you got? What do you want? What do you want to in relation to Irving and Bert? What's going on through your head?
So I got from your analysis that you are pretty convinced that Fields is telling the truth about it 20 years ago. Bert was meeting with a Lumen partner, and this is 8 years before Severance, which means he's connected to the Lumen project in a way that's both deeper, higher, and more important than just working for them as a severed employee, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I don't know for 100% if Fields is telling the truth there. My line of reasoning was that as far as the Jesus stuff, because that was a huge, like when they dropped that, like we came there through Jesus, like that.
I thought that was another joke he was doing. Like,
yeah,
what are you doing here? And yeah.
And then they never laughed. And then it became clear that it's not necessarily a cover story. Like it might be as far as what Bert could use it for, but I feel like at least Fields is 100% earnest when he's saying that he's worried about spending eternity alone. You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah. I think,
yeah. And so like, if I start from that, then, okay, so he's going to, so what does it mean whenever he slips up? I mean, he's drinking. So if you take the simplest thing is that he said something he wasn't supposed to say, right? There's other options, like he could just be trying to cause problems, like like just derail it, because he's definitely jealous of Irv. This is kind of like this is like seeing someone he had an affair with sitting right with them at their dinner table. Like, why did you invite this guy? Why did you invite this guy over here? You know what I mean? But yeah, so like if we just take it on the face value that he was drunk and that slipped out, then what else does it mean if he has a memory?
I didn't get it wasn't drunk, it's just he's having a senior moment. Because like Bert implies that he's slipped sometimes, and when he drinks it's worse. But the fact that, again, it's another one where the show I think does such a good job at setting up two possibilities and letting us kind of go crazy on them, is because he's like, yeah, this is when we started calling it something completely innocuous that we don't care about, when they started calling each other's pet name, and it was 10 years ago. And then the guy says, oh, no, that was 20 years ago. So they're like, okay, it's 10 or 20, who cares? But then he says, well, that's when you were having your meeting with your Lumen partner. So to me, there's two possibilities. Fields is having a senior moment, and he's genuinely confused of his time frames, and the confusion around their pet name is evidence of that. Or he is right, and Bert is trying to shave 10 years off of his Lumen connection to preserve some kind of secret thing with for Irv's benefit. And even when we were talking about going earlier about like whether this was all just a diversion so that Drummond can go and riffle through his paperwork. The other thing is, like, man, that's such a conditional plan to, like, okay, here's what you're going to do, Bert. You're going to camp outside of Irv's phone booth for nights and weeks until he gets so suspicious he charges your car. And when he does, invite him for ham. Like, what? So I think that this is another one of the things where they have thrown us a red bloody bone for us pack of dogs to fight over, while the real thing we're probably supposed to be paying attention goes by the wayside. Because, like, but I mean, I don't know. I can't, but like, what is, okay. Other than, Bert's evil, what does this get us that he's been with Lumen for 20 years? Is he really severed? He can't not be severed, right?
Well, that part I don't know. People seem to be pretty adamant that he's not. That doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to me. Like, I think it makes more sense that he was.
It's like, really committing to the bit to go through and fire him and do all this stuff. And if this is some kind of double secret inside job.
I think, yeah. Okay. So let's think about it that way. If he is Lumen, what does that add to the story?
Intrigue. Like we need
well,
more
it
of
does,
that.
but here's the thing, right? Because like with Irv is something, there's something going on with Irv that we're not 100% sure about. Like he's pursuing Lumen and Severance. He worked there for 9 years. He's only supposed to have been severed for 3.
Wait, what?
There's
who?
Irv is,
Irv.
Yeah.
So between 3 and 4 years. Yeah, okay.
Whenever Felicia talked about Bert, she talked about working with him for so long and everything else. Like all of that, like
Bert himself said that he's worked at least for O&D and for 7 years, and he's so he's at least been severed for 7 years if you take that, but maybe he worked at another department. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's I think that is the evidence against is just his career, like being an actual severed person. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
right.
Why would he do that if his job in Lumen was something different? It's not like a Helly situation where she was going to do it temporarily for a time for a PR stunt. Like he was deeply embedded. Like he went to work,
and him and Fields.
Someone has said that they saw him there. Felicia has said that she saw him there for years, day in and day out. You know what I mean?
That's really committing to the bit. And him and his husband looked like they were excited to go on a big trip when they got fired. And like it's. I just don't know. It makes just as much sense that Fields is having a senior moment as it does that this is undercover a plot, and all the other like evil kind of demented looks that he's having could just be a man who is plotting to betray the confidence.
Yeah, he's
of
like
his husband
he's saying, you know what, this guy's into me. I can tell.
Right. He's got a bit of scoundrel in him too. I want to put a little bit more.
I tested him out. He's okay with me. He's okay with seeing me behind Fields' back. Like this is on. We're on. That might be what the shady stuff is. Like that's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess what would be the opposite, like where I was going with it when I was thinking that he was working for Lumen, was that this could end up for being like something really, it would really turn up the danger for Irv. You know what I mean? Like if now that he's trying to
but he's already got Mr. Frolic going through his underwear drawers. Like how much more danger do you need him to be in?
Those things would be connected in my mind, I guess, if in the way that they're presented. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
no,
because
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So because like if Bert has a secret that they need to keep, then that makes Irv expendable. You know what I mean? Like we need to get rid of Irv because he's getting too close to this piece of information. It could be maybe he's not, maybe he doesn't work for Lumen, because the words that they use there are very confusing too, right? Because he says you're a Lumen partner. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like your partner that you worked on a project with, or
right. Your partner, you were this boyfriend at the time, and then you left him for me. There's a lot of
like your ex who you used to, who was from before that, that you met at Lumen. So your Lumen partner in that way. It's very strange language that doesn't really help, does it?
No. Well, as I say, I think that's part of the deliciousness of the show, because as this was happening, as he said, the 20-year, I'm like, oh my God, because this also was connected to the slip up with the pet name. There's this plausible deniability. This is Helena Helly all over again. And it probably means it's beside the point. But I do think it's interesting because you mentioned Irv is expendable. Maybe he literally is. Like or Irv could die at the end of the season, because there's all this lampshading of that too. Because Mark's like, he's not dead. He's still alive on the upside. Who gives a shit? What if we actually permanently lose a character? That would add a new dimension to the show. I'm not rooting for it because I love Irv.
No. Yeah,
but
I
there's no way
think it's a distinct possibility.
And there's no way any Irv is ever coming back. No effing way.
That's why I think you
So
can kill the Audi, because then, you know what I mean?
and it
Then
would
there's
give
like
some
real
real
stakes.
stakes. Yes. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. And that's the reason why I thought that if Irv has, I mean, Bert doesn't have to be on the board or like a Lumen charter or some kind of other thing. And he definitely doesn't have to be involved in the cult of Kier either. But I mean, that's an angle too. He could just be a true believer. And that's where this idea of being around Lumen for longer and trying to conceal some of that, you know, but that's what I was thinking, was that we might actually see them take Audi Irv off the board.
Oh, damn. Will's got another good point. He's had a couple here, but like, cause I was thinking like, okay, it makes sense that he's got the key to Irv's front door cause it's a Lumen property. How the hell does he have the key to his chest?
That part was,
these people check their keys into Lumen for 8-9 hours a day, every day.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Anything that's in their wallet, anything that's attached to their keys, anything Lumen could copy anytime they would care to. And they could do it as a matter of course.
People are saying that Irv works for Helena.
I have no idea how that would connect.
Yeah, I think I think there's a distinct possibility that we're going to see some crossover. Like I said, Cobell is obviously someone who could be working behind the scenes with someone else rather than just you know, everything that she does in the office. Obviously, Irv's working with someone, you know.
Lee Wiley Coyote says, I hope no one has advanced copies of the show. I can promise you that probably no one does, because we had these first 6 episodes, but now the screeners are only coming like one at a time, and we're not going to get them till just a few days before the show airs. So I don't think anybody's reading ahead at this point. I never do. I only stay enough ahead to make sure we can get the episode out right in the but like now we're all going to be just on the same page essentially.
The people who got the full season for reviews, those are people that wouldn't be.
Oh, yeah, a couple people did, like Alan Sepinwall.
Yeah.
Like,
I know that's what I'm saying, but those aren't
who they decide.
It's not like he's going to get a fake handle on Reddit so that he can go and spoil shit for karma. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he goes undercover as Dan Feinberg and posts all of his crazy shit on Reddit.
So that he can be like, everyone can be like, wow, you were right. How did you figure that out ahead of time?
He does it for the karma, like we all do.
Yeah. But yeah, it's as far, I don't know anyone that had more than 6, and there were for review purposes, but like I said, they were all pretty, as far as I know, they were all pretty
did
big
you ask Quinn if he did, because he got the full package?
He only had 6.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if that's like if you were a big shot reviewer, they gave you the full package, but
no, because it came up last week when we were talking and we were all wondering, and so I emailed him this week to make sure that we were getting them, and he told me to let him know about that too.
Right on.
Yeah, usually this is the time when I'm getting pumped, because as soon as we finish this up, then I'll go watch the next episode.
I know, right? But it's not to be.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on with Bert and Irving. Like, like I said, there's definitely playing with the idea of whether their chemistry crosses over. Like I picked up on that, but then also after the fact, I watched the inside the episode later, and that seemed to be something specific that Dan Erickson was going for, like what transcends, or like what slips through between the characters when you're severed.
Mm-hmm.
Super fun dynamic though, and I do think like one of the things that you really kind of lose sight of, or you're supposed to not really pay attention to, is because Irv is just he plays a fish out of water so well in this situation. You know what I mean? But I think he went in there with a lot of information that he never lets on about.
That's true. Bert's and Irv is a deep file too, because we know that he knows stuff about Bert that it's like, this isn't. Maybe they haven't actually met, but he had him marked on the map, and he's done the research into him, and so
yeah. So that last bit, this part here, where he's like, or both, or what, or either, like where he says, "I'll see you alone," basically, and it's flirtatious, like. That might be all be a part of a setup too. That might not be chemistry carrying over.
Yeah, that might be them both playing each other. Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. Well, we have officially made it to the end of the notes. You got anything?
One question we didn't cover is, what do you make of the hunger? Like, what about integration would make you super hungry? Are you eating for two? Is it some kind of metabolism thing? Like, because I just like, is there that's something that Petey, we didn't see him do too. Like, what is
Petey wasn't eating much out at that nursery,
right?
that plant nursery or whatever he was at.
Right.
I mean, yeah, the only thing we know for sure is that Ragabi said that's because of that. You know what I mean? Like she wasn't surprised by it at all. She was like, yeah, of course, you're reintegrating. You're going to be hungry.
Is that Helly's pregnant confirmed because Mark's getting sympathy cravings? One
thing that I saw was those little shot glasses or little shot bottles that he had in there that looked like they have something growing in them almost. You know what I'm talking about in his refrigerator? I saw a theory about those that was pretty interesting. Someone showed a picture of fermented goat's milk.
No way.
Yeah,
like those like baby food spooge containers he was opening.
Yeah, and it's not. You could see how that could be what they were trying to depict there.
What in the name of holistic medicine are they doing?
Well, the thing about it is that fermented goat milk is supposed to be good for like cognitive issues.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Of course.
Like yeah. So that's one of the applications that people use that for, is to like if they're having like maybe after you have a stroke or something like that, you know what I mean? Like you need to reestablish some of those neural pathways or whatever it is,
I hate to tell you, but if eating a goopy jar of fermented goat milk is the cure, I think I'm dying. I think A-Rod's shuffling off the mortal coil.
Yeah. I don't know, other than someone said egg drop soup, and that's what it actually looks like in there a lot more.
I do love egg drop soup. I don't think it looks like goat spooge at all, but I do. I actually need to get some, or not egg drop, hot and sour soup is what I need. I need some hot and sour soup to clean me out.
Yeah,
they hot and sour soup just like opens up your nasal passages, and
they visited that the Chinese restaurant. One thing, Mark has his chopsticks skills are pretty bad.
Yeah,
I kind of like that detail, how he was sort of shoveling and using his fingers like together. That was kind of funny. But yeah, that kind of food, that sort of like American Chinese fast food, you don't really see that anywhere else, you know what I mean? And then that one, you're right, that hot and sour soup they have at those places is pretty good. I miss that. That's something that I miss. Egg drop. I used to like egg drop, but then I got into the hot and sour, and it's just,
that's what I'm saying. Once I got hot and sour, I never look back.
Because it has the same thing. It has egg in it too, right?
Right. It's just got that kick.
Yeah. So you're sick. I'm gonna let you get out of here.
I'm starting to fade a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to. Like I said, I appreciate you coming in and
I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun. You almost killed me laughing like 3 different times, man.
Yeah, you're going to be back for what, 8 then? I guess this is.
Yeah, I'm probably the finale, bringing it home for the finale.
Yeah,
man, I can talk Jim. Maybe would you be interested in having me and Jim both on? Or that be?
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was going to say I thought you might want to do it that way, because that should be one to really get to, and it would be nice to do one with all three of us together.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be fun. Next week, I don't know. I'm gonna reach out to some different people and see. I got popcorn for dinner coming back for number 9. And I'm gonna try to get some other people in there too. So yeah, I'm gonna let you go. Thanks again. Thanks to everyone who came out. Appreciate all the questions. Hopefully, like we will have just as much stuff to talk about next week, because like I said, I'm really bummed that I'm not going to watch the next episode right this minute, but
yeah,
that's the way it goes sometimes.
Leave us with a sinister Bert to say goodbye.
Yeah.
See you next week.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming out. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Yeah.